A reading from the 22nd chapter of Numbers, beginning with verse 4. Now Balak, son of Zippor, was king of Moab at that time. He sent messengers to Balaam, son of Beor, at Pethor, which is on the Euphrates, in the land of Ammah, to summon him, saying, "A people has come out of Egypt. They have spread over the face of the earth, and they have settled next to me. Come now, curse this people for me, since they are stronger than I. Perhaps I shall be able to defeat them and drive them from the land, for I know that whomsoever you bless is blessed, and whomsoever you curse is cursed." So the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian departed with the fees for divination in their hand, and they came to Balaam and gave him Balak's message. He said to them, "Stay here tonight, and I will bring back word to you, just as the Lord speaks to me." So the officials of Moab stayed with Balaam. God came to Balaam and said, "Who are these men with you?" Balaam said to God, "King Balak, son of Zippor of Moab, has sent me this message. A people has come out of Egypt and has spread over the face of the earth. Now come, curse them for me. Perhaps I shall be able to fight against them and drive them out." God said to Balaam, "You shall not go with them. You shall not curse the people, for they are blessed." So Balaam rose in the morning and said to the officials of Balak, "Go to your own land, for the Lord has refused to let me go with you." So the officials of Moab rose and went back to Balak and said, "Balaam refuses to come with us." Once again Balak sent officials, more numerous and distinguished than these. They came to Balaam and said to him, "Thus says Balak, son of Zippor, do not let anything hinder you from coming to me, for I will surely do you great honor, and whatever you say to me I will do. Come, curse this people for me." But Balaam replied to the servants of Balak, "Although Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not go beyond the command of the Lord my God to do less or more. You remain here as the others did, so that I may learn what more the Lord has to say to me." That night God came to Balaam and said to him, "If the men have come to summon you, get up and go with them, but do only what I tell you to do." So Balaam got up in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the officials of Moab. God's anger was kindled because he was going, and the angel of the Lord took his stand in the road as his adversary. Now he was riding on the donkey, and his true servants were with him. The donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with a drawn sword in his hand. So the donkey turned off the road and went into the field. And Balaam struck the donkey to turn it back on the road. Then the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path between the vineyards with a wall on either side. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, it scraped against the wall and scraped Balaam's foot against the wall. So he struck it again. Then the angel of the Lord went ahead and stood in a narrow place where there was no way to turn either to the right or to the left. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, it lay down under Balaam. And Balaam's anger was kindled, and he struck the donkey with his staff. Then the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey, and he said to Balaam, "What have I done to you that you struck me these 3 times?" Balaam said to the donkey, "Because you have made a fool of me. I wish I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now." But the donkey said to Balaam, "Am I not your donkey, which you have ridden all your life to this day? Have I been in the habit of treating you in this way?" And he said, "No." Then the Lord opened the eyes of Balaam, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his drawn sword in his hand, and he bowed down, falling on his face. The angel of the Lord said to him, "Why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? I have come out as an adversary because your way is perverse before me. The donkey saw me and turned away from me these 3 times. If it had not turned away from me, surely I would by now have killed you and let it live." Then Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, I have sinned, for I did not know you were standing in the road to oppose me. Now therefore, if it is displeasing to you, I will return home." The angel of the Lord said to Balaam, "Go with the men, but speak only what I tell you to speak." So Balaam went on with the officials of Balak. May God add a blessing to the reading and hearing of his word. Was this a new story for you? It's not a book or a story we read a lot. But who doesn't like a talking donkey? The success of Shrek testifies to the popularity of talking donkeys. Who is Balaam, though? He's not an Israelite, but he is someone who knows and fears God. He has a special gift of blessing and cursing. It's not a spiritual gift we talk about these days. Maybe the best way to think of him is a consultant who offers advice. The king of Moab has heard of Balaam and his gift. He wants him to come and curse the Israelites. He's heard of their military success, and he's worried. God tells Balaam not to go, and Balaam obeys. So far, so good. Well, the king persists, sending more envoys to ask what it will take to get Balaam to come. And again, he refuses. But then something happens. And I admit the text can get confusing right now, because initially it seems that God gives Balaam instructions, telling him to go, but only to say what God will tell him to say. Yet when Balaam saddles his donkey and goes with the envoys, God gets mad and sets out to stop him. What happened? Did God change his mind twice and get mad at Balaam for not knowing that God changed his mind? That doesn't sound like God, does it? God isn't fickle like that. Maybe there are times when we misunderstand God's direction, or maybe we deliberately ignore God's leading. I don't know. Does that seem to be what's happening here, though? Did Balaam misunderstand God's voice? He seems to have gotten it right the first time. Or did Balaam decide God wouldn't mind if he went with the envoys, collected his fee, if he didn't actually curse the children of Israel? That sounds more plausible, because it sounds human. It's having your cake and eating it too. Regardless, Balaam saddles his donkey and sets off for Moab, and God is not happy. The text says God's anger was kindled. But God doesn't smite Balaam. Instead, God sends an angel to stand in Balaam's path. The text doesn't say that Balaam can't see the angel, though he clearly doesn't. I mean, wouldn't you react if there was an angel with a drawn sword in your path? However, the donkey can see the angel and behaves in a perfectly rational way. He avoids that angel with his sword. The first time he turns aside into a field. The second time he squeezes by him, scraping Balaam's foot against a wall in the process. The third time he can't turn aside or squeeze by, so he lays down in the dirt. And each time he's protecting his master. And each time he's rewarded for that wisdom and care with a beating. Then God does something extraordinary. He lets the donkey speak. "Why are you beating me?" the donkey asked. "What have I done to deserve this?" Pay attention to Balaam's response. "You've made a fool of me." He doesn't seem at all surprised that his donkey is talking. All he's worried about is that his donkey's uncooperative behavior has made him foolish in the eyes of those with him. And the donkey answers, "Is this how I usually react? Aren't I a good donkey?" And Balaam says, "Yes, you're a good donkey, and no, this isn't usually how you act." God intervenes here. Balaam's eyes are opened and he sees the angel with the sword. And the angel speaks, saying, "If your donkey hadn't saved you, I'd have killed you by now and let him live." Balaam gets humble really fast. "I've sinned. I'll do what you tell me." But notice there's no apology to the donkey. I think Balaam has started believing his own press. He thinks he's someone special. I mean, he's got kings begging him to come and help them. We often quote the proverb, "Pride goeth before a fall," and here is Balaam living it out. His pride is about to get him into trouble. His pride keeps him from seeing the angel. His pride causes him to beat his donkey. A talented organist in the days before motor-driven or electric organs gave a magnificent concert in which the big pipe sent forth glorious, thunderous tones. Afterwards, people congratulated him. And the little boy, who was the one who worked the bellows with all his might, popped up and said, "Hey, we did pretty well, don't you think?" Well, the organist scornfully replied, "And what did you do?" He gave the boy no credit at all. A month later, during another concert, the organist came to this passage that required all the wind of which the bellows were capable. And yet suddenly, the organ began to fade away. The organist signaled for more wind. Instead, that little lad who was working the bellows again pulled aside the curtain and said, "Is it I or is it we?" Pride is a dangerous thing. Yes, we should own and celebrate the gifts that God gives us, use them to bring God glory, but we must always remember that they are gifts and they are to be used for God. When we start thinking it's all us, when we start believing the flattery around us, we set ourselves up for a fall. Balaam thought he had the power to bless or curse. He forgot that he spoke God's blessing or curse. Thought it was all about him. Is it I or is it we? This is not our church or our ministries. This is God's church, and these ministries are about God's kingdom. And we can never forget that. Even before God gave the donkey the gift of speech, that donkey was speaking to Balaam if he had paid attention. You know, maybe you can excuse the first time he missed the signal, but not the other. As the donkey pointed out, he had never behaved that way before. He wasn't in the habit of turning aside or scraping his master's foot or laying down in the road. This should have told Balaam something important. But Balaam didn't listen. Why? Why didn't he listen? Maybe he was too busy with his own thoughts and business. And we often miss things because we are too busy with other things to pay attention. Happens in the church. We get so busy with the programs that we forget the ministry. Maybe Balaam didn't think the donkey had anything to say. Too often we scorn the counsel of people or things we think are beneath us. Animals, children, subordinates, the elderly. Again, that happens in the church. Some people's voices seem to matter more than others, to be louder than others. We risk missing the quiet voices and the voices that may be counted as less important. And yet, that may be exactly through whom God is speaking. And then perhaps Balaam just didn't like what the donkey was saying. He was delaying Balaam's progress and getting this great reward that was ahead of him. Sometimes we don't want to hear the voices saying what we don't want to hear. There's a pastor in a church going through a lot of changes. There are lots of voices complaining, as people will do when anything is different. Then his wife points out that one change is not really working the way intended, and it was the straw that broke that camel's back. He expected complaints from everyone else, but his wife should support him. He said it caused one of the biggest fights of their marriage. And what made it worse is that he knew, at some level, she had a point. But he didn't want to hear it. I'm sure that's never happened in Lindsay. Let's learn from Balaam. We need to listen to our donkeys. God uses all kinds of voices to speak to us. Some are human and some aren't. God's voice is there to guide us as we follow where the Spirit is leading us. Let's not be like Balaam and let our voices drown out God's. Let's not be like Balaam and ignore the voices of those we think may be beneath us. Let's not be like Balaam and ignore the voices saying things we don't want to hear. Let's pay attention to the obstacles in the path. If we are following God's wills, those obstacles tend to disappear or shrink in importance. If we are leaving God's path, The obstacles come up and even get higher. Let's learn from Balaam. God is leading us. If we get off on the wrong path, God is ready to help us get back on the straight and narrow. And God will send messengers to guide us, even donkeys. Let us pray. God, lead us, guide us. Help us to hear your voice and the ones you send to speak to us. Help us to listen, even to the least likely of your messengers. We want to follow you, to be your people in the world. Amen.